If you love mocking the left for how insane they have gotten in the era of Donald Trump, this episode's for you. We've got racial segregation as an anti-racist return to Jim Crow. We've got 2-year-olds, evil 2-year-olds, who are more interested in cookies than anti-racism. Those kiddos really need to get their priorities straight, don't they? And we've got the enduring crisis of white males. And I'm just going to go ahead and preemptively apologize for my very existence and go ahead and say that I do believe my mother should be gulagged for even having me. That bitch. Also, we have the enduring crisis that is our Constitution. Because how can we have a fair and just world so long as we have freedom? All this and more on today's episode of Revved Up. But first,
Every time who I am, well, I came, I'm a man, 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I am.
I'm terrified. Listen to me, Republicans, listen. You are the people in history they warned us about. They warned us about people like you. Pay attention. We're losing our democracy. Wake up. Wake up. I'm terrified.
now, I'm sure you guys have all probably seen this video, but I had to start out with this because this is just what the left sounds like these days. They are screeching banshees, and they've absolutely lost their mind. This is not a well woman. This is not a woman who understands what is going on in the world. This is a woman who has been poisoned by leftism and has been brainwashed by our media into believing that there are Nazis around every corner and that Trump is a fascist dictator, and he's a fascist dictator who does let people riot and leave it up to the states to handle that sort of thing. Wait, is he a fascist dictator? I don't even know anymore. These people have gone absolutely insane. Now, before we get going, I want to remind everyone to hit that like button. I know it's a little preemptive. You don't know whether you like this video yet or not, but go ahead and give me those stats and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, hit the notification bell or you won't know I put out videos, because we all know it's voices like mine that are first to be taken out back in Old Yeller by the folks at Big Tech. Also, many of you guys don't realize yet, but I have launched a merch store, and I've put a couple new designs up there, including this new Dreamland Exiles one, which is I'm pretty proud of. Designed it myself, and gonna have some more t-shirt designs and that kind of thing coming. But if you want to go ahead and check that out, there is a link in the description to my Teespring merch store. But let's go ahead and get started with this video. So we have the first story, and this is from the Post Millennial. Seattle libraries implement racial segregation in the name of social justice. And we all know that now, in the evolution of social justice, that means in the name of anti-racism. So we have racial segregation in the name of anti-racism. If that doesn't make sense to you, well, that means you're probably not an insane leftist. So let's go ahead and see what they're saying here. The King County Library in Washington State have been holding separate but equal training sessions for their employees, all in the name of social justice. And, it's like they've done a full circle, the left. The left went from being liberal to being illiberal to all the way back around being the Klansmen that the Democrat Party represented 70 years ago. You would think that would have taken them a little bit longer to go full circle, but I guess by the nature of progressivism, they progress in one direction, and to mix that with the spinelessness of Republicans up until the era of Donald Trump, and they really ramped that up pretty quick and came right back around to KKK, Jim Crow-style segregation. It's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, this from Christopher Rufo here. This is racial segregation in 2020. The King County, Washington library system is holding separate but equal training sessions for its employees, all in the name of social justice. It's time for the Justice Department to put a stop to this madness. And yes, it is madness. This is how we end up reversing our society. You know, they say they're progressives. But the right has always called them the regressive left. This is exactly why. They're regressing to an old system, and then they're putting a new polish on it. You know, just polishing an old turd and trying to say that it's something new. It's not. It's not. You know, because at the same time, you know, we have here in California, they are repealing their civil rights, the civil rights wording in their constitution, in their state constitution, and they're saying that it's in the name of affirmative action, that it's going to be so that they can, so that they can, what's the term? Positively discriminate against positively discriminate for minorities. But at the other side of their mouth, they also say that we have a massive problem with white supremacy. Well, what's going to happen when you take away those protections and all of a sudden you have all these white supremacists that you're so afraid of running these institutions? Do you think they're going to be discriminating in favor of minorities or against them? It's absolutely asinine. And what's also hilarious is that it's happening in King County, Washington, which is named after Martin Luther King, who said, you know, he dreams of a day when people are judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Well, now they're clearly being judged by the color of their skin. So, according to Chris Rufo, filmmaker, is the director of the Discovery Institute Center on Wealth and Poverty. Wait, is that a sentence? At the King County Library System, a private consulting firm called Racial Equity Consultants recently held racially segregated listening sessions as part of the library's ongoing racial justice programs. And these racial equity consultants are nothing but grifters. They are using critical race theory as a way to grift, create a new wedge where they can come in and be kind of the only voices in the space, and then charge exorbitant amounts of money to spread their absolute nonsense. And they don't care about the destruction that it's going to cause in its wake, because this is absolutely how you cause destruction. And, you know, all of this, you know, it's essentially positive racism for minorities, but it's very negative racism towards white people. And what happens when you discriminate wholeheartedly against the majority of the country? You're going to see a rise in white nationalism as a pushback to this. You're going to see a rise in white racism as a pushback to this. People who before didn't have racist thoughts, they're going to say, okay, well, you set the rules, I guess I'm going to play by them. That's going to be the inevitable result. And how is that going to play out for the minorities who are much smaller in number? It's not going to play out very well. And God save us, we do not want race wars in this country. We have moved away from that. We have evolved beyond that. But of course, people like these racial equity consultant grifters would not be able to make a fortune off of their grift if we had a society that actually got along. The entire goal is to wedge us apart. So the consultants began with an anti-oppression framework and used segregated sessions in order to root out institutional privileges and systemic inequities embedded in the current socio-political conditions that influence and affect our institutions. What does that even mean? You know, they use all of this stilted academic language that is just a bunch of gobbledygook. So, institutional privileges. What are the institutional privileges in the library system? Anybody can go in there and check out a book. How much further does it go? So the consultants discovered widespread institutional racism in the library system. Of course they did. Of course they did. They discovered that widespread institutional racism in the library system and dismissed employees who reported not experiencing or witnessing racism while working at the King County Library System as likely suffering from the false consciousness of internalized racism, which, when reached by email, racial equity consultants said it was not authorized to comment. Of course they're not authorized to comment, because it's a total sham. So they discovered widespread institutional racism. You know, it's one of those things where if you dig deep enough while doing enough mental gymnastics, you'll find a way to rationalize anything. That is essentially what this comes down to. They're looking for it. They're looking for a way to construct it and concoct it in places that it doesn't exist. And of course, then they go ahead and they dismiss employees who don't experience racism, who say, what are you talking about, as suffering from false consciousness of internalized racism. This is basically their way of saying, what we say goes, and what you say means you have a sickness and a disorder where you're not able to see it. No, these people are grifters. Plain and simple. These people are out for money and power. That is all they care about, and this is how they do it. And anyone who falls for this is a goddamn sucker. So according to Rufo, similar sessions are being held in the Veterans Administration Puget Sounds facility and the King County Prosecutor's Office. Wow. So this is going on in the prosecutor's office. Now you can imagine what that's going to mean if you're a white person who is maybe attacked by a black person and you have to defend yourself. They're going to come up with they're going to do their mental gymnastics and dig for ways how you were racist for defending yourself. And they're going to charge you with a hate crime and probably murder or assault or however it plays out on top of it. And they're going to find a way to make a hero out of the person who attacked you, as we've already seen done in the instance of what was his name, Jacob Blake. You know, apparently he was there potentially kidnapping those kids because the lady was screaming, those are my kids, or those aren't his kids, something along that line. He had already apparently raped her or sexually assaulted her, and he was back for more when she called the cops, and then he fought the cops. They tased him. That didn't do anything. He goes to grab a knife, he gets shot, and then he becomes the hero. And that's all because of this kind of stuff. It is the absolute disillusion of justice and the law of order in our country. So, at VAPS, the local leadership has launched a series of racially segregated caucuses for individuals who identify as white, individuals who identify as African American or black, and individuals who identify as people of color. Why is white not a color? Why is white not a color? I mean, this stuff is... They're trying to tear America apart. You have to understand what the undergirding principle is here. This is Marxism. This is communism. This is cultural Marxism. And they're using it as a wedge to tear America apart, let it all burn underneath this, and then they can form their own communist totalitarian power structure from the ashes of the country they destroyed. And we're sitting here indulging them and engaging with them. No, these people need to be told, shut the fuck up, you're insane, and we know exactly what you're up to. In fact, you could even say it is somewhere along the lines of treason and sedition. Somewhere. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, I admit, but there's got to be something where we know what they're doing, but they use this to mask it. So how do we prove it? It's a conundrum. But we need people to understand, and that is going to be the first step, is spreading the understanding that these people are grifters who are out to destroy America and then fill in the power vacuum that they create. That is the sole goal of all of this. So King County Prosecutor Dan Satterberg and senior staff have recently required employees to sign a equity and social justice pledge and assign to continued training for white employees who must do the work to learn the true history of racism in our country. Rufo said that every time he writes an article or posts a picture from the sessions, more whistleblowers come forward. This stuff is absolutely, absolutely disgusting, and it is infecting all of our cultural institutions. And we even see that now, this one right here, we have this from Slate. And my 2-year-old doesn't seem to care about being anti-racist. And so, dear care and feeding, my husband and I, we're white, have a 2-year-old daughter and are doing our best to be anti-racist parents. We're making sure that she has lots of multiracial dolls, only consumes books and TV shows with diverse characters, has no problematic Halloween costumes, and so on. But when we try to discuss issues like structural racism, intersectionality, or white fragility, she doesn't seem all that interested. She often walks away, asks for a cookie, or even falls asleep. Have we screwed up somehow? Has society's disdain for the perspectives of marginalized people already infected her? How do we get to appreciate the urgency of the conversation around deconstructing white supremacy? Signed, Anti-Racist Mom. And the response here, now, before you get too worked up about the response, we're going to work through this and then we'll get to the response. As the mother of a black daughter, it terrifies me to know that you are raising a little Klan member in training who cares more about chocolate chip cookies than chocolate-colored people. Certainly, she has already proven that she is problematic beyond repair. My suggestion to you is that you put this child up for adoption. You've done all you can, and she has shown who she is. If you don't get intersectionality by age 2, you never will. Use the money and resources that you would have spent to raise this future segregationist, who are the segregationists now, to instead care for a child from a marginalized community. The mommy blogs can be very helpful in terms of determining which nationalities are on trend this season, although I warn you that you'll likely have to shop domestic due to COVID. Don't worry too much about your old daughter. She'll probably land on her feet. Good riddance to bad rubbish. This is the kind of, if this is kind of insensitive for you, it was kind of insensitive for you to be raising a white kid during a time like this anyways. Now, before you get too worked up about the response, she says, I most certainly hope I didn't accidentally mistake an earnest letter for a lazy troll. If so, whoops, and you might want to relax a bit. So, I knew right away that the response here from Jamila was tongue-in-cheek. However, I am not convinced that the original letter was a troll. Because we have seen this sort of insanity from the left and from these white guilters for quite a while now. And we have seen things that are this crazy. And we've kind of reached this time where satire is dead, because the moment you satirize something, the left goes ahead and makes it a real thing. There is no hyperbolizing their positions anymore. It just, you can't do it, because they just say, hold my beer, and then they go and do that, or hold my kombucha, or whatever the hell they drink, you know? So I honestly think that this Jamila, while responding tongue-in-cheek, actually did miss that. I think these people were being sincere. There's nothing about this, the way that it's worded, that leads me to think that they're trolling, because there's nothing hyperbolic or mocking in it. You don't troll unless you want people to kind of catch on that you're trolling, and there's nothing that shows this here. So I could be wrong. Maybe this is a troll. Not a very good one, because it lacked the humor that is necessary for trolling. But it seems from the person this anti-racist mom, that she's literally concerned that her 2-year-old is not worried about this. You got to realize, these are the same people that think their 3-year-olds can choose their gender. So if you can choose your gender at 3, why can't you understand, if you can understand gender and choose your gender at 3, how can you, shouldn't you be able to understand anti-racism when you're 2? We're talking about the same people here. You can choose your gender at 2, 3 years old. So then why would they not expect you to be able to understand anti-racism if you understand all the nuances of your gender when you're still a little toddler? I just thought this was funny because, this might even be going so far that even this black anti-racist here, who apparently seems to be on board, Jamila, with anti-racism, but is mocking the overall ridiculousness of this. Even she gets it. Jamila Lemieux. Yeah. I just think it's absolutely hilarious. But we're seeing more of this racism from the left. Racism is just everything that the left is about. And they call it anti-racism just because it makes them feel like their racism is the good racism. They've got that good racism. But we've got this other article here from Foreign Policy in Focus, and it's the problem of surplus white men. Dispossessed white men have haunted Western politics for generations. The answer isn't to jettison identity politics, it's to create truly meaningful new opportunities. And this is written by John Pfeffer, who is the president of Foreign Policy in Focus. Now, I'm not very familiar with Foreign Policy in Focus. I don't know whether they're a particularly legit organization. Their website doesn't look to be, anything too spectacular. So I don't know whether there's some credited or credible or accredited type organization, but let's go ahead and read what they have to say, and we'll see how they think about the surplus of white men. So the problem of America today is the problem of white men. Who lies at the intersection of guns? Of course, the intersection. We're already starting at intersectionality here. Second sentence in. Who lies at the intersection of guns, right-wing fascism, pandemic and climate change denialism? Who ensures that racism continues to course through the lifeblood of the country? Who stands in the way of gender equality? Who supports foreign wars in the military-industrial complex? Who is getting hit hard by the erosion of manufacturing base in the heartland? All right, well, let's go through this piece by piece. So, who lies at the intersection of guns? If you've looked what's happened this year, there have been tons of first-time gun owners, especially black first-time gun owners. But sure, white men like their guns. I mean, maybe that's a thing. I just thought Americans like their guns. I think Americans of all stripes like their guns because we are a pro-gun country. Right-wing fanaticism. Sorry, I thought it said fascism earlier. Right-wing fanaticism. Well, to people on the left, anybody to the right of Leon Trotsky is a right-wing fanatic. Most of the people that are right-wing fanatics, according to the left, are really just centrists and constitutionalists. But of course, they changed the definition of everything because that is the modus operandi of leftists and communists, is to obscure the language and to change the definitions so that nobody's ever really talking about the same thing. It breaks down our dialogue. Pandemic and climate change denialism. Nobody is denying the pandemic. We just don't think that shutting down the entire country and locking ourselves into our house for the next 10 years is the correct answer to it. And we also understand that pandemics are things that have happened historically, and while tragic as they are, we've never had a response like we have had to COVID, which is far less deadly than most of the other pandemics that we've actually had to deal with, other than swine flu, which, infected, I think, 60 million people. Good job, Barack Obama and Joe Biden. They just had the fortune of it not being nearly as deadly. And we even see that based on the statistics of deaths during the pandemic, only about 6% of them are truly from COVID. Most of them are from comorbidities being exacerbated by COVID. So I guess you could give COVID like half credit for those deaths. But then we also, a number of those were also because Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, Andy Cuomo, Tom Wolf, and what's his name in New Jersey? I forget the governor of New Jersey. Those 5 governors were putting old people into nursing homes with COVID. So, and just spreading it around the nursing homes, the most vulnerable. And then also we saw all the statistical manipulations of people that died with COVID. I mean, how many people remember early on when people were getting shot to death and then they took them to the morgue, realized that they had COVID in their system and said they died of COVID and marked it as a COVID death. So we really have no idea we really have no idea how deadly COVID really is, and shutting down the entire country, that can be worse than the actual pandemic. These people don't seem to understand that. They don't seem to understand the complex nature of how things work. They just say, the TV said 200,000 people died, so we gotta shut the entire country down. I'm scared. That's their response, and that's the totality of their response. They don't seem to understand. And it's the exact same thing with climate change. Nobody is really denying that the climate is changing because nobody really denies that the only constant in the climate is that it changes over time. What we are saying is that it doesn't mean that we create a socialist, redistributive, completely shut down the economy response. That doesn't mean we end we end our reliance on fossil fuels because we have nothing legitimate to replace it with. And, you know, these people say, well, solar power is there. Sure, solar power might be able to charge your home, but it's not going to power a car plant. It's not going to... There are many, many things that solar is not yet capable of actually running, of actually powering. But these people don't think about that. They just think, well, I put 2 solar plants on my roof and my refrigerator works, so we can do this. That's the left. That's the left. They're idiots. They don't understand things. And if they do understand it, then they're just lying. They're just dishonest. And they're not telling us that what they really want is to ruin the capitalist economy so that they can replace it with a globalist and communist and socialist economy. So, next point. Who ensures that racism continues to course through the lifeblood of our country? I think I've made clear in the past two articles that we've discussed that it's clearly the left, which is not made up of white men. I mean, and the only white men that are involved in that movement are little limp dick betas. Let's be real here. Let's be real here. So, it is the left who views the world entirely through a racial lens, who takes on this anti-racist activism where everybody is just the sum of their skin color. They're the ones who are keeping... Racism was on life support. It was damn near dead up until Barack Obama, when he started pushing and endorsing a lot of this critical race theory. Obama actually taught critical race theory in his classes. It was the teachings of Derek Bell from Harvard, who was the inventor of critical race theory. And he took Derek Bell's teaching, taught it was it Columbia? No, somewhere in Chicago. I forget where Barack Obama taught. But he took the teachings of Derek Bell and continued them, and then maintained a relationship with Derek Bell for years afterwards. I'm sure even to this day. So, who stands in the way of gender equality? Well, what is gender equality? Because the genders are not equal. We're complementary. We're the yin and the yang. You know, we're two things that are supposed to go together, but we're not the same. How do you have equality out of two things that are not the same? It doesn't make sense. It's, you know, I really look at the left and I see that they want this future where we're all just dressed in gray, hair shaved. All of us are androgynous. We look the same, and that's the equality. That's what they're going. That's the inevitability of where they're taking us. So gender equality, what does it even mean? You're talking about two genders, in which also are they saying that genders exist, that there is such thing as man and woman? Because we're seeing very different arguments from other people on the left. And then those same people will also argue for gender equality. It's really incoherent. All of the ideology on the left makes no sense whatsoever. Who supports foreign wars in the military-industrial complex? Not the Donald Trump era conservative white men. We've been all for pulling out the troops from Afghanistan. We're so proud of Donald Trump for not getting us into any new wars. We're so proud of him for creating these new peace deals in the Middle East and between Kosovo and Serbia. We're very proud that this stuff is ending. Meanwhile, you have the media on the left. The only time that they called President Trump presidential was when he was bombing Syria, when he was dropping Tomahawk missiles on Syria. Meanwhile, you got Obama, whose nickname was Obama, because he ramped up the military-industrial... Well, he didn't ramp up the military-industrial complex. He actually decimated our defense. He just replaced it all with drones so that he could just bomb places while leaving us weak to attack. You know, our defenses were down, but our offenses were way the fuck up. So, don't put that one on us either. Because there are a lot of people on the right who don't want this military-industrial complex. We don't want to be the world police. We don't want to be involved in all of these foreign entanglements. We just want to have a strong military. We want to have the strongest military so that nobody comes and messes with us. But we don't want to be out there messing with everybody else. So who is getting hit hard by the erosion of the manufacturing base in the heartland? Yeah, that is. And I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to say by that, because the rest of it seems to be that they're pushing all this bad stuff, and now they're saying, well, who's getting fucked? Okay. Yeah, I can give you that one. White men certainly have been the ones getting fucked by the exportation of manufacturing, which was also put on overdrive during the Obama administration. And we're now finding out is much thanks to Joe Biden and all of his deals with China. You know, selling out so that he can line his pockets while he sells out the American middle class. And then we wonder why. It seems like in places like here in California, where I live, there is no middle class. You're either filthy rich and you're one of the elites, or you're dirt poor and you're barely paying rent on an overpriced studio apartment. It's, you know, it sucks. It sucks. But that is all what the left has been doing. It's not, and don't attribute the left to white males. I mean, unless you're going to want to go all the way back to, Stalin and Lenin and Gramsci and Duchka and all those people. But these people, I'm sure, likely side with those white men. So white men are twice as likely as non-white men and white women to own guns. I'm not sure that's true. Maybe women, sure. But that's because, like I said, men and women are complementary. That's why we don't have exact gender equality. And it is the man's job to protect women, because one of those inequalities are size and testosterone. And our job is to protect. Their job is to civilize. That is how the yin and the yang go together. But, you know, that's why we own guns. Although white women espouse racist right-wing views as much or even more than white men, it is the latter that overwhelmingly show up to vote, to gather with guns on the street, and to intimidate non-whites in person and on social media. I have not seen a single instance recently outside of, like, Black Lives Matter people who will, you know, white Black Lives Matter activists who will go up to a white man a black man and drop the N-bomb on them for call him an Uncle Tom if they happen to have an American flag or be pro-Trump. I have not seen... Where are all of these right-wing white men going around intimidating non-whites? I haven't seen it. I've seen the left going around and who are also mostly white. Maybe I'm misreading this entire argument and it is indicting white people on the left. But then again, I don't think I am, because they're talking about right-wing fanaticism. So no, I'm not right. These people are just absolutely incoherent, and they do not have an understanding. Their worldview is just an entire fantasy land. So, where was I? Okay, so conservative white men, yeah, exactly. They're not talking about left-wing white men. Conservative white men have been at the forefront of climate denialism, according to a fascinating sociology study from 2011. I already explained, you know, the whole climate denialism. Nobody's denying it. We're just saying, we're just asking actual questions instead of just saying, oh, the climate's changing. Well, let's just hand over all of our personal agency to a big central government, a big global government, and they'll do just trust that they're going to do good by us. No, we actually have some questions to sort out before we get through it. The problem is, when we ask those questions, instead of engaging in the conversation with us, the left calls us climate deniers. Well, how are we supposed to figure this out if you won't have the conversation with us? If you just call us names whenever we try to talk to you about the questions and concerns that we have about what you're talking about. So, according to a fascinating... and it's not just Donald Trump who hates to wear masks during a pandemic, but men more generally. Yes, because hormonally, women are more risk-averse than men. Men, we have tens of thousands of years of going off into the jungle and wrestling woolly mammoths and killing animals with our bare hands to throw over our shoulders and bring back. And now we're supposed to get scared because of a virus that's not all that deadly? You know, we're supposed to be the brave ones. And there is a sense of bravery and not cowering every time there's a threat. not cowering every time there's danger. Women can do that. That's fine, because it's our job to protect them. Men can't do that. So a significant gender gap exists in the use of force with women considerably less likely to support military intervention. Actually, I don't think that's true. Now, maybe when you're talking about just like in a household, the husband is say, yeah, go bomb them, and the woman says, no, I just want peace. But history actually shows that when you have a woman in charge, like whether she's the queen or whether she's the president or, you know, whatever, prime minister, however the country holds their power structure, women have actually proven to be more likely to go to war than male rulers, because the women never actually go onto the battlefield. They don't understand the horrors of war. And so they're female leaders are much quicker to just send men off to their deaths, where men are like, well, hold on, let's see, is this worth it? Because I remember when I had to see my best friend's gut spill out right next to me, and I took an arrow into my shoulder and then survived the gangrene that happened afterwards. So that's not entirely true. So take the example of Brad Parscale, Trump's former campaign manager. He was detained in Florida this week after allegedly hurting his wife, waving around guns, and talking about suicide. After his demotion to a digital consultant position in the campaign in July, he no doubt was worried about losing work altogether after the November election. Well, who isn't concerned when they're losing work? Are you trying to tell me that if a black person is told, well, we might have to let you go we're going to be downsizing, and there's a good chance you might be out, that they're just going to be like, oh, okay. No, they're going to be worried too. That is just a human reaction. That is a human response to be worried about that. So then they say, there it is in a nutshell: white male violence, right-wing politics, and anxiety over economic security. First of all, what about black male violence? What about black male violence? Because we know that black males commit about 50% of the murders in this country. You want to write an article about that? No, you don't. Because you're gaslighting. You're lying. This person is straight up lying. Right-wing politics, that has nothing to do with any of this. They're just pulling out buzzwords now. They're just pulling out buzzwords to use. And anxiety over economic security. Who doesn't get anxiety over economic security? This seems to me like they're just like saying, well, let's take all the jobs away from these people and then fuck them. We don't actually want to hear them complain and get worried about it. Like, can't they just go wither and die in a hole somewhere? That is what this sounds like to me. So, of course, I'm not talking about all white men, no, because we have those beta cucks that are out there, you know, behaving very disgustingly and being very creepy in their lack of masculinity and their weakness. But plenty of white women have jumped on the alt-right bandwagon. Alt-right? They're using buzzwords from like 2016, 2017. The alt-right, do they even exist anymore? And the leader of the alt-right, Richard Spencer, has said, is the only person that I can think of that has what the left calls Trump-gret. You know, those people who voted for Trump and regret it? Literally, the only person I can think of that has said that has been Richard Spencer. Because he said that Donald Trump did nothing for the alt-right, and he now agrees with the left. And he has endorsed Joe Biden. Richard Spencer has said that the Democrats are now more capable of taking him in the direction he wants the country to go. That's why he retweets people like Ibram X. Kendi, who wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist. Ibram X. Kendi will write some insanely racial statement about black people, and then he'll say, and then Richard Spencer will retweet it and say he's not wrong. Because at the end of the day, Ibram X. Kendi and Richard Spencer are two sides of the exact same coin. They're two sides of the same coin. And that is why this critical race theory has been an entire grift. Because these people that buy into it because they have some sympathy for minorities who, by the narrative, not in reality, but by the narrative, have been oppressed, they fall for it. And they're unable to see that it is the same thing. Just, it's the same coin. They've just flipped it over. So plenty of white women have dropped on the. All right, and American conservatives can always point to a few people like Clarence Thomas, Ben Carson, and Diamond and Silk to allege that their ideology is colorblind. Our ideology is colorblind. It's called freedom for all. Freedom. Freedom is our ideology. And it's a lot more than just those three people. In fact, we have seen support for Donald Trump in the walkaway campaign, where black people have been waking up to all of the stuff that I'm talking about right now and are walking away from that and saying, I want to be an American. And we welcome them with open arms. So how can you say that our ideology is not colorblind if we open up our arms and welcome anybody under our tent? Because we're not the ones viewing the world through a racial lens. That's these people. That's these people. We're viewing the world through a philosophical lens. And we don't care. It's philosophical and it's cultural. And we don't care the color of your skin. If you adhere to the principles of liberty, freedom, and the American way, we don't care. I've told this story a couple times. I had an Uber driver one time, and he was from Iraq. He was an Iraqi immigrant, and somehow politics came up. I had a couple drinks because I was at the bar, and he just goes off and he says, I love Donald Trump. I love America. The freedom here. This is a great place. And he just went on and on about how he loves Trump. He loves America. All this. And this guy from Iraq. And I loved it. I loved it. In fact, I think we even talked about going and getting a beer. It never happened. I think he gave me his number and I lost it. I was going to go out and grab a beer with him so I could talk more about his experiences coming to America and what he loved about America and all that. And he wrote it down and I lost it, unfortunately. But I would much rather have 1,000 Iraqis like him come to America than 10 Swedish socialists that came here and hated America. I don't care if they look like me. Doesn't matter to me one bit. If that's not colorblind, what is? What is? It's the left that is anything but colorblind. They're viewing everybody by the color of their skin. And they're even saying that to be colorblind is to be racist. I mean, this is Ingsoc. This is 1984 Orwellian ideas that they're pushing here. But white men who are all revved up with no place to go. All right. They're calling me out personally now. All revved up. But white men who are all revved up with no place to go pose the greatest challenge to American democracy. Wow. They are the core of Donald Trump's support. They are showing up in the streets in militia formations and with Proud Boy banners. First of all, I don't think Proud Boys have banners. They have shirts. And also, the Proud Boys are not militias. They're basically a beer-drinking, flag-waving fraternity. They don't show up with weapons anywhere. So these people clearly don't even know what they're talking about. They don't do any research. They just live in this echo chamber. It's like an echo chamber, but a game of telephone as well, where each echo gets louder and more distorted each time it bounces from one person to the next. So, the manosphere of online anti-feminism is the gateway for many right-wing activists who worry about being replaced by minorities and immigrants. Wait, what? So, anti-feminism has to do with being replaced by minorities and immigrants? I think this person is just throwing in buzzwords so that the algorithm finds it higher. I think this is a grift. This is a grift. They're just throwing in as many buzzwords as they can to get searched. So it shows up, top of the search list on Google, and that they get the traffic. I'm not buying this. I'm not buying that this is not in good faith. This is not in any kind of... I don't know. It's just not in good faith. It's just not in good faith. So, and white men have been struggling for a long with a long period of enormous economic dislocation that has turned them into a surplus labor force. It's funny, because if you were to talk about, say, Syrian refugees who have been economically dislocated and geographically dislocated, are they going to talk about them with the same disdain that they're talking about white people? I have a feeling they won't. I have a feeling they wouldn't. I have a feeling that they are the immigrants that they condemn us for being afraid of being replaced by, supposedly. Whatever. It's just absolutely incoherent the way these people think. So if Donald Trump loses in November, these white men will remain a problem. So we're a problem. Just cast us all, white men, we are a problem. Now, considering that these people are far leftists and are, informed by Marxism, Stalinism, Maoism, the teachings of Gramsci, all of that, I seem to recall a quote from Joseph Stalin. Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. Let that sink in. Because white men are a problem. Where do you think this leads? These people are doing everything they can to just watch the world burn, to tear this nation apart, to rip the cultural fabric apart at the seams. It's really disconcerting. And I wouldn't worry about it if it was just some asshole at the Foreign Policy in Focus. But this mentality has infiltrated and rotted out all of our cultural institutions. So it's a serious concern. After all, unlike liberals who threaten to decamp to New Zealand if Biden loses... Wait. Oh my God. All right, let's get through this sentence. After all, unlike liberals who threaten to decamp to New Zealand if Biden loses, disgruntled Trump bros are not going to just up and leave the United States. The left is just... And first of all, liberals are voting for Trump now. They're not voting for Biden. It's the left. So... After all, unlike liberals who threaten to decamp, they're not threatening to decamp to New Zealand. I haven't heard that once. What they're threatening is riots in the streets. They're threatening to burn America to the ground if Trump wins again. We've seen this over and over and over again, them talking about it. We've already seen it happening throughout the entire year. What the fuck are these people talking about? Absolutely insane. Yet that's precisely how countries long dealt with the problem of surplus white men. Wait, what? What's precisely how? These people are evil. These people are dangerous. John Pfeffer here. How much you want to bet he's a white man? How much you want to bet? Let's see if there... Yep. John Pfeffer. He is a white man. And of course, he looks... Balding, glasses, he looks like an absolute pussy-ass beta bitch. Of course he wrote this. Of course this was written by a white male who is likely an outright racist who just feels so guilty about it, he turns it inside out. But he can't help himself from still being racist. So let's go to our next article from the left, and this episode of the Left Roundup. So we have this article from the Soapbox at, I believe it was Slate. I believe it's Slate or Salon, one of them. I don't know. They're all the damn same. The Constitution is the crisis. There is no reason why a rigged Supreme Court should have the final say on the law of our land. It is an almost... Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys so you can read it. let me see here. It is an almost entirely foregone conclusion that Amy Coney Barrett will be seated on... Okay, so this was written before Amy Coney Barrett. This is kind of a roundup. These are a bunch of articles that I kind of rounded up over the past couple weeks that I saw come out, and I just hadn't had a chance to put them all together. So, cementing a 6-3 conservative majority that will serve as an obstacle to Joe Biden's policy agenda should he and the Democrat Party win full control of the government in November. Let's, dear God, pray that they don't. As everyone by now knows, that's a majority Biden and Democrats could conceivably do something about. Progressives have been pushing court packing for years at this point. Yes, because if they can't win by the rules, they change the rules. They just steamroll. It's one of the major items of a structural reform agenda that also includes eliminating the Senate filibuster and adding new states. I know. Look at that. Look at that. They're just... they are trying to just do everything that they can so that they become a one-party supermajority and just can rule supreme over this nation. And that's why they're talking about abolishing the Constitution. They're saying the Constitution is the crisis. Something's got to be done about these people, guys. Something's got to be done, because otherwise we're going to lose, and we're not going to have our country anymore. And they're the ones that are ruining it, not us. So it's one of the major items of a structural reform agenda that also includes eliminating the Senate filibuster, adding new states. In recent days, a number of more moderate voices have joined in, backing court packing as a strategy for rebalancing the judiciary, specifically justified by Barrett's nomination. It's not justified. Just because you're losing doesn't justify you changing the fucking rules. The American people voted in the Republicans to the president and the Senate in order to do just this. This is the will of the people. They're talking about the will of themselves, the will of their own power. So they say if Democrats add just 2 justices capable of winning bipartisan support, conserving a 6-5 conservative majority, except not really. It really just puts us right back where we started, and not even really that, because Justice Roberts is not a conservative. Sure, he was appointed by George W. Bush, but it seems like every time there is a major decision that came down to it, Justice Roberts always sided with the left. Keeping Obamacare, that was constitutional. It was constitutional for the government to mandate that we buy insurance. That was Roberts. He was essentially a swing vote. And we've also seen that Gorsuch and Kavanaugh have also ruled in favor of the left before. So that's the thing, is they call it a conservative majority, but it's not. Because nobody that the right actually puts on the bench is just a reliable voice. A reliable conservative voice. But everybody that the left puts on, lockstep. Lock fucking step. So, this would change the political environment from a situation in which one party routinely plays hardball and the other party gets rolled. Since when was that? You know, that was the situation for decades until 2016. That was the situation that Republicans had to deal with for decades, was that the Democrats always played hardball and the spineless Republicans would just get rolled because we'd lay down and take it. Because we never actually wanted conservatism. Or they never wanted conservatism. They just wanted to slow down the progressivism. So let's see. To a situation in which both parties have an incentive to cooperate in order to avoid the disaster of an ever-expanding Supreme Court flipping back and forth between parties as power changes hands. Exactly. That's what the left is going to do if they expand the court. But the Republicans have been playing by the rules. We've been playing by the rules. We've been using the power that the people gave us. This isn't about the parties. See, they're viewing this entirely as these parties are supposed to be balanced. They're only supposed to be as balanced as the American people choose. And if the American people choose that they want a more conservative government, then a more conservative government is what they should get. They shouldn't just even it out for the fairness so that the left, who is losing popularity and losing favor, gets equal power. No. The American people get to decide that. This isn't a party thing. So, It also corrects the imbalance of a court stacked with Republican appointees, returning both parties to something closer to an even playing field. Again, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that the court is supposed to be balanced among ideologies. In fact, it wasn't even supposed to be. It wasn't even supposed to be full of ideologues. And that's the thing, is on the right, it still isn't. That's why you get Republican appointees that will side with the liberal appointees. That's the only reason you get that, is because they're not ideologues. But the left made the Supreme Court a place for where ideology is supposed to rule supreme. And now they're pissed off that it's backfiring, because everything that they do tends to backfire. Because America does not like the left. We do not like leftist ideology. That is not the great American experiment. So we don't care about correcting the imbalance of a court stacked with Republican appointees if the American people voted into power the people to stack the court, or to what did they say? Yeah, to stack the court with Republican appointees. That is the will of the people. You're going to have to live with that. You don't go and change the rules just because you're losing. So, conservative and legal scholars have criticized Biden and his surrogates entirely fairly for claiming that Barrett's confirmation process is somehow unconstitutional. It plainly isn't. No, it's not. But this is the setup. This is the setup. Because this is what they're going to use to set up the fact that the Constitution should be abolished. So, Jurasek and Hennessy don't argue so themselves, but they make the case that Barrett represents a transgression offering more reason for dramatic reform than the structural defects and inequities progressives have long identified with the constitutional system. Well, okay, tough shit. It's the Constitution. It is the foundation that this entire nation has been built upon. If you break that foundation, the entire structure falls. It collapses. And we don't care what progressives think. America was not founded as a... Actually, in its time, it was extremely progressive. But the progressives today are regressives. They're leftists. They represent everything that America was not supposed to be. They only exist because Marxism spread from the East to America through our institutions and subverted our cultures and subverted our histories. So, let's see. Long identified within the... So, some of which they list explicitly. The court has come to more closely represent the interest of a powerful minority. It's not a powerful minority. They were voted into office. They wrote, and we are not a straight, direct democracy. That is not how this country was ever supposed to be founded. I talked about this, I think, in yesterday's video. They wrote, justices are confirmed by a Senate in which rural, predominantly white states are overrepresented. That is because they would have no representation whatsoever if it was just a simple, straight democracy where California, Illinois, and New York got to determine policy for the rest of the country. Why would they even be in the Union? So, justices are confirmed by the Senate in which rural, predominantly white states are overrepresented. The Electoral College amplifies the same effect in producing presidents who win elections despite losing the popular vote. Somebody really needs to explain to these people how our Constitution works and how our government structure works. How we were designed to work. So they said the constitutional system has always been full of contradictions. After all, and idiosyncratic as it is, it has been more or less functional as the basis for a common agreement on how things should work, they explained. Today, though, a president who resoundingly lost the popular vote has filled 2 seats on the Supreme Court. Again, they keep going back to this popular vote, as if we're a direct democracy. We're not. I mean, I feel like that should be the end of the conversation, right then and there. He has since been impeached. That impeachment was a total sham. He was impeached along very partisan lines. And he was impeached for making a phone call making a phone call, essentially. But he was worried about something that it is now coming out Joe Biden and Hunter Biden absolutely did, selling out American interests to foreign countries, just like their entire mindsets have been infiltrated by foreign influences, i.e. communism, socialism, Marxism, Maoism, Stalinism, all of that shit. Their entire mental processes have been subverted by foreign interests. So he has since been impeached. If Barrett is confirmed and Trump goes on to lose the election, or if Trump loses the election and Barrett is confirmed, is confirmed after the vote but before he leaves office, the Senate will push that common agreement already strained beyond its breaking point. It's not a common agreement. What common agreement are you talking about? Did we give a wink and a nod to direct democracy when we were actually a representative republic? No. We didn't have that. We didn't have that common agreement. Fuck you. You just want power. That's it. We want the power to keep to keep you out of everybody else's lives. That's all we want. The only power we want is to keep you from having power over us. I don't want to have power over that person. I don't want to have power over that person. I don't want to have power over you. I only want to have power over me. But I do want to make sure that you do not have the power to usurp that power over myself. So Republicans felt they shared the basic... If Republicans felt they shared the basic premises with Democrats about how our system should work, we don't. We don't. We did. We did at one point. But we no longer do. And it wasn't us that changed. It was the Democrats. It was them going further and further and further left. And then and then we were being drugged with them until Donald Trump finally, somebody put drew a line in the sand, put their foot down and said, fucking enough. And they can't stand that. They can't stand it. So Republicans felt if Republicans felt they shared the basic premises with Democrats about how our system should work, they probably wouldn't have spent the last several decades constructing an infrastructure within the legal profession aimed at totally dominating the judiciary. What? An infrastructure within the legal profession? I don't even understand that, actually. I don't even understand what they're trying to say there. So, having won a clear electoral college victory, yes, clear electoral college victory, because that is the only victory that matters in America. And I heard somebody interestingly say that, the left and the right, there's a set of rules. We're both supposed to play by the same rules, and Republicans do. And yes, Donald Trump lost the popular vote, but he wasn't campaigning for the popular vote. He was campaigning for the electoral college vote, which he won resoundingly. If he had campaigned for the popular vote, who's to say he wouldn't have won it? Having won a clear electoral college victory, Trump has taken the opportunities he has been given to nominate three Supreme Court justices. Senate Republicans have been approving them through the process the Constitution set out. Yes, of course, they're basically saying that this is all constitutional. They acted strategically to hold one of those seats open. You will not find in the Constitution a prohibition against doing so, or, for that matter, any suggestion that the court should be evenly balanced between the appointees of two political camps or parties that didn't exist at the founding that aren't intrinsic features of our political order. Wow. Wow, look at that sentence. It's like they actually understand it now. They actually understand it. But that means that they can't win, so they hate it. So, I skipped over a bunch of this stuff because a bunch of it was just garbage and gobbledygook. So, the American left should... This is what we wanted to get to. The American left should work towards abolishing the Constitution someday, either for a new document or a new democratic order without a written Constitution. No written Constitution. They're basically saying no protection of your rights. Imagine if we didn't have the Constitution, all the stuff that our government would do to us. Our American government. No, they're not. Government is not great. That's why our system is designed to keep the government in check. That's the problem, is that the Democrats, the left, do not ever want their powers checked. And when they get put in check, they scream that everybody else is is breaking the rules, and they want to change the rules. No. No. You need to understand that there are limits to power. But the left doesn't get that. So it's not at all obvious why what the founders and framers thought they did should determine how we govern ourselves today. Yes, it is, because you have a foundation. You lay a foundation, and then you build your nation up over time on that foundation. That is why. You do not completely implode it. We have made some changes. We have made growth. We have made corrections. But you don't completely dismantle the entire thing, or the whole thing comes toppling down. So that is why it is obvious that, yes, what the founders and framers thought should determine how we do things today, especially since we created the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of this world. That's another reason it should be obvious that we should do that. So the fact that the Constitution is the second governing document they came up with, and the means by which they did away with the first, should have profound implications. No, it shouldn't have, because the first one lasted, what, 8 years? The Articles of Confederation? It was like a trial run. It was batting practice before the game. You know? But you don't get to the ninth inning and say, well, should we really be playing by the same rules as we did in the first inning? Because, you know, in batting practice, things were different. No. Doesn't make sense whatsoever. Doesn't make sense. So, you know what? I was going to read all this stuff. This video is already getting long, and I got a couple other stories, but these people are calling for the dissolution. Oh, yeah, this is from the New Republic, not Slate. This is from the New Republic. But they are calling the Constitution is the crisis. They're basically saying the Constitution needs to be gotten rid of. Absolutely, absolutely disgusting. So we have this other article also showing how even more disgusting from the left. And this is from Salon. And so this is, well, let me let it load real quick. Pornification and purity in cuties are two sides of the same patriarchal coin. Buckle up, bitches. It's time for feminism. So, you may be wondering what all of the hoopla is surrounding the Netflix's French film Cuties. Those calling to censor cuties. It's not really censorship when you don't want little girls being sexually exploited. I mean, that's like the most basic form of censorship that we can be okay with. To censor cuties and the backlash to hashtag cancel Netflix for sticking by it, condemn the film for sexualizing for sexualizing little girls, while altogether missing the message of the movie. We don't care about the message of the movie. You showed little girls doing these things, and this wasn't like an 18-year-old actress portraying an 11-year-old girl. The girls that you actually had doing this stuff were 11 years old, and you were filming the 11-year-old girls doing this stuff. It doesn't matter. You could film a documentary about why animal cruelty is bad, and it's just you sitting there bashing animals over the head with a hammer, looking into the camera and saying, see how bad this is. That's not you getting your message across. That's you doing something bad and then saying you're only doing it to show people that it's bad. That doesn't make it good. That doesn't make it permissible. That doesn't make it acceptable. So, let's see. Condemn the film for sexualizing girls while altogether missing the message of the movie. That is a critical commentary on pornification. Again, you know, apparently in this, when they were doing the casting process for this, they ran the casting process for 6 months and had over 650 girls try out, 11-year-old girls. Sat there for 6 months watching 650 11-year-old girls twerk and do these sexual provocative dances. It's pretty creepy. Pretty creepy. Almost makes you think that maybe they were just trying to drag it out as long as possible so they could enjoy it for their own lurid fantasies. Really, really gross stuff. So, oh, okay. So here we go. This is from Bernadette Barton. She says, as a gender studies professor. Surprise, motherfucking surprise. Who has taught about these issues for many years, I am not surprised by the confusion surrounding cuties, because I know that it's hard to talk about the sexualization of culture also called raunch culture without offending somebody. Nobody's confused. Nobody's confused. You, Bernadette Barton, are the only one that's confused as to why people are enraged that these people actually filmed 11-year-old girls doing this stuff, no matter what their message was. So she goes on to say that one of the more effective ways to raise awareness about a problematic cultural norm like pornification is to baldly show it. And this is the tactic that Ducore takes in many cringe-inducing scenes of Amy and the girls practicing and performing in a dance competition. These people are giving me a headache. I've got one more article after this. Actually, two. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of them because this is also running long, and I'm sure it's also driving y'all nuts. Just all this leftist bullshit. Whew, so, let's see. Where was I? My brain is just... Okay, so one of the more effective ways to raise awareness about a problematic cultural norm is to baldly show it. Well, she might not be wrong on its face that, sure, seeing something does draw abject criticism to it and shine a light on it. The problem is that you actually had to do these things with 11-year-old fucking girls. That is not acceptable. Because the problem is the girls who actually had to do all this stuff, both in the audition process and in the film, they still had to go through this as 11-year-old girls. They're still real people. They're still real human beings that are going to have to grow up with this experience. And they're going to look back and they're going to say, wow, when I was 11 years old, a bunch, I had to be on set with a bunch of lights on me while I touched myself there. I didn't even understand that then. And it's going to fuck them up for lives. For life. That's why people who are molested tend to have very, very, very bad problems when they get older. People who are sexually abused when they're young. These actresses who were put through the ringer on this, these girls, they're going to have those issues. So it doesn't matter whether you're shining a light on it. You created the problem that you're trying to solve. You exacerbated it by your actions. Your messaging becomes irrelevant at that point. And, you know, I'm done with this. I'm going to go to one last thing here. And we all remember last week when 50 Cent came out and he said that he was endorsing Trump. Well, we have Chelsea Handler here, says she scolded 50 Cent over Trump support. I had to remind him that he was a black person. Yet it's us on the right that is racist. This is one of the most racist things I've ever heard in my life. And we're going to listen to what Chelsea Handler said to Jimmy Fallon.
You heard about my ex-boyfriend, right? 50 Cent and his support of Donald Trump.
Yeah, what's going on between you? I saw your tweets and I go, wait, what's happening? Because you said he was your favorite ex-boyfriend and then what does he do? He's supporting Trump?
He says he doesn't want to pay 62% of taxes, which, by the way, isn't a plan of Joe Biden's. That's a lie. So he doesn't want to pay 62% of taxes because he doesn't want to go from being 50 cent to 20 cent. And I had to remind him that he was a black person, so he can't vote for Donald Trump, and that he shouldn't be influencing an entire swath of people who may listen to him because he's worried about his own personal pocketbook. So I haven't heard back from him yet, but I am willing to, you know, seal the deal in more ways than one if he changes his mind and publicly denounces Donald Trump. I might be willing to go for another spin, if you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, who does this woman think she is? She, as a white woman, gets to remind 50 Cent, you cannot vote for Donald Trump because you're black. And you also cannot influence other black people to vote for Trump. She's really taken her name Handler to a whole new level. What does she think she owns 50 Cent? Would Democrats own black people? Because that seems to be the message that she's getting across. And yet this is the same person that has the gall to sit there and say that Trump is a racist. Meanwhile, she's sitting there and saying, I had to remind him that he's black and he can't vote his own mind. One of the most racist things I've ever heard in my life. So, as long as cancel culture is alive and well, cancel the fuck out of Chelsea Handler. That bitch is done. Anyways, guys, I'm getting exhausted here. Just going through. I even had one more article that I was going to show, and I couldn't even get through all this stuff because all this leftist nonsense is just ugh. But anyways, guys, if you did like my commentary and that I walk through the minefield here, reading these lefty bullshit here for you guys, and not making you read the whole thing, is just hitting the points. Go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. And also, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Parler, Minds, and Pilled.net, all at Ram Thorburn. And if you're interested in contributing to the channel, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. And as always, rev your engines, ride hard, and fight like hell.
Every time who I am, well, how